Hi everybody, welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. I am Maria Spatelnik and I'm here to help you sew more with a lot less stress. So today, for those of you who don't know, I'm a professional organizer by trade, so we always start with the tip of the day. Today we're going to talk about storage zones. Now, I've mentioned in the past that sometimes where you store things makes a bigger difference than most people think it does. And I'd like to explain it like this because it's been confusing in the past. I'm still learning this job, so bear with me. Let's say I was sitting down to do some hand sewing. Okay? Everything I need to do that project needs to be right within arm's reach. Okay? It can be over here on an end table or something like that next to me. But it needs to be within arm's reach because that's how I'm going to use it. I don't need quilting magazines with potential future quilts right next to me right now. That is something that, since it'll be less frequently used, or at least not used at the moment, really belongs across the room or in my sewing room, as opposed to in my living room chair if that's where I hand sew. So I'd like you to think that your prime real estate is within arm's reach. So if you hold your hands out in front with your hands like this in front of you, anything in that zone should be the things that you need to access now. Yes, your drink should be there. You know, your TV remotes, you know, your radios, whatever it is that you listen to or watch or whatever. Yes, but in that zone. Because if I was sewing something, I wouldn't want to have to get up and walk across the room to get a pair of scissors to snip my threads. Right? That makes sense. So I'd like you to think of this zone around you as your prime territory. So everything you need should be in there, and nothing you need should be. So just kind of keep that in mind moving forward. So there's a lot of updating to do. But I do have one more organizational tip that's a lot more specific. Let me move this aside. So this is a ruler holder that I got years ago. And there's room on the bottom to put some rulers here. So when I had it mounted on my wall, the rulers stick out this way. And I was using command hooks. I love command hooks because you can move them around. They hold quite a bit of weight, etc. But one thing I had not considered was with the rulers, the weight wasn't right up against the wall. So if here's the wall and here's the hanger, like a picture, the weight is right up against the wall. But in this case, with all those rulers sticking out, my weight was away from the wall. And ultimately, it pulled the Velcro apart, and I walked in, and it had crashed. It took out the one underneath it, and I had rulers, most of which survived, but several of which didn't survive, smashed on my floor. So that tells me something that I want to pass on to you, is that if you're going to have something that's not flat up against the wall with the command hooks, I would go ahead and do something different. So I'm going to rehang this using the actual hangers that are back here. And those will be nails in the wall with anchors, screws with anchors, just to make sure that this doesn't happen to me again, because I don't want to have to replace rulers multiple times. And I just realized I never turned on my lights. I apologize for that. Maybe this will help. There, now you can see every wrinkle. Okay. Anyway, so those are two things for today. Now, the 2023 Mystery Quilt has been designed. I have kept it simple per the requests that I've gotten. The first one I'm doing on the channel I think should be simpler anyway. If you decide in the future that that's another annual quilt you'd like to do, you can always let me know if you want something a little bit more challenging. But this one should be fairly simple. And I don't want your fabric selection to be very difficult either. So I'm going to show you what I'm using. Okay. I'm actually going to do it twice. I'm going to do it once with one background and once with two different backgrounds. And I only have one focus fabric. So I'm going to be doing one with all white, one that's half white and half black. You can see it here. So the black one has different colored polka dots. Okay? The white is a white on white. And then this lovely piece is going to be my focus fabric and my outer border. Okay? I don't have your fabric measurements yet. I'm doing a couple of tests to make sure that my math all works out. And I still need to calculate the borders and things like that. But that's it. It can be very simple. You can have as brilliant and vibrant as you want. If you want muted colors, you can do whatever you want with that. I do recommend that there be some pretty decent contrast. So let's say you wanted to do an all-white quilt. An all purple quilt. I'd make sure I had like a pale lavender and then something very vibrant, or something in the medium to dark range, like a medium plum color. What you don't want is two that are very close. One of the test blocks I did, I just grabbed random squares that I had, and I had this pale gold and cream, and except for the sparkles that was on the gold, you really couldn't tell the difference very well from a distance. So make sure you've got your contrast. But that's all you need to worry about. Now, amusingly enough, I had two... Hold on, there's a note here. Hold on. My sound is cutting. Hold on. I gotta expand this. And I hear a sewing machine. That's really odd because I'm not using my sewing machine, Judy. Send me another note if that's still going on. It may be the computer. And let me double check and make sure that I'm fully on here. I think I am. So drop me another note, please, Judy, and let me know. Let me also just double check that this one is on fully. My microphone here has two parts. So there's the part here that sticks on my shirt. Well, it doesn't stick, it clips. And then there's this little pack. And the pack, hold on here, has an on-off switch. And there's also a part that plugs into the computer. And that also has an on-off switch. So I just double-checked that they were both on fully. So, Judy, please let me know if I've fixed it. If not, I'll have to see. I can also maybe turn it up a little bit. So hopefully that'll help too. Okay. And by the way, please, anytime, comments, questions in the chat. I want the chat to be a very interactive thing. Okay. Okay. So in terms of the mystery quilt, I did get 2 comments for sizes in the comment section, and then I got a bunch by email. Some of you love to leave comments, and that's wonderful, particularly like right now if you're live. But I have some people that they're just going to email me. So all in all, I got back that you wanted to do the mystery quilt in table topper, lap size, wall size, and bed size. And one of my bed size people, George, I'm talking about you, said that he wanted it in king size. Okay, let's start with this idea. I am not going to suggest somebody make a king size mystery quilt because that's an awful lot of work and you don't know if you like it yet. So let's not do a king size. What I'm going to do, I think, is the reason I'm going to do the 2 quilts is because I'm going to do table topper size. And I'm going to do 2 because if somebody's doing a lap quilt, it'll actually be closer to 4 in terms of numbers. But I thought people might like to see the contrast in case they wanted to do like part of it the original way and then afterwards do more the other way. So I just wanted to kind of give it an option. What I'm going to do is I'm going to offer the table topper and the lap size yardages. And then if anybody has a specific size after that that they want to work with, if you email me, I'll figure it out and I will get it to you. Okay? But I think having too many options out there and then people might look on the wrong line and cut way too much fabric up for the size that they're doing. I want to make sure that this first one, we're keeping it simple, remember? So that's what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to offer you the fabric yardage in both the lap size and the table topper, and then you can do with it what you will. And I'll just say background. There's a 4-inch square difference between the halfway mark if you're doing the two-tone. So for most people, you're going to have those extra squares anyway. So I don't think it'll make a huge difference in the yardage. So I'll just be able to say background this mount, and then you can do backgrounds however you want to do it. I did actually have a student tell me once that what she did is she picked her focus fabric on a different quilt that I did years ago. And she varied all of her backgrounds. So she, let's say in our purple quilt concept, maybe it was a strong floral. Then she might do several different shades of pale lavender up into the medium lavenders as the background pieces and kind of intersperse them. That's definitely an option. But, you know, that's something I'd like you to kind of think about if you want to make another one. I think your first one, let's keep it simple. Even the pattern's going to be simple. But what I want to do is I'll give you the fabric yardages next time. The time after that, we'll start with the cutting, and I would like for the table topper to be completely done, especially if you're sewing while this is on. I'd like you to be done by the end of the year without having to stress. Okay? One of my things, if you're new here, is that this is supposed to be comforting for us and relaxing for us. So adding more onto your pile, you know, that's complex or finicky or difficult is not what I want to do here. Do I make finicky, difficult quilts? Yes, I do. I do a lot of ones that are for... It's been a long day. A lot of the ones that I do on commission are just that kind, okay? Where you are precise every step of the way, and you have to make sure that you've got everything perfect, and that can be really difficult. The stuff that I want to do here on the channel is going to be stuff that will be a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more comfortable. Okay? So, that's it for the mystery quilt right now. But next time, the first Wednesday of February, you're going to have your fabric measurements. So I wanted to let you know kind of now what to start thinking about, what you might want to pull. Okay. Okay. So, I told you I was working on a charm quilt. This is the one behind me. I'm going to switch the view here and let you see the whole design wall, which is kind of crazy. Okay, so this behind me is the charm quilt. This is for Centerville Quilters Unlimited. And halfway through, I was going to change my mind, but the requirements didn't let me do what I wanted to do. What I thought about doing was appliquing an exploding star pattern onto one big piece of background, because you can only have one piece of each fabric. But when I reread the rules, you could put a border on to like clean up your edges. That was all you could do. So I said, to heck with that. And so I stuck with my original pattern. So this is halfway. Okay, so this is the bottom half. No fabric is repeated. That's part of a charm quilt. It all had to be exactly the same pieces, etc. On the right over there, those little pieces, those are the pieces that were left when I cut out my original triangles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my camera here, and I'm going to show you a little bit more up close. You don't need to see my notes here right this second. Okay. Okay, so this is what those triangles over there look like. Here we go. What I did was I started with squares. Okay. And let me see if do I have a square handy? I have my notebook. We're going to pretend that this notebook is fabric. Okay. Here we go. And these were 5-inch squares. And I sewed down one side, across, down both sides and across the bottom, and then I cut out my big triangle. Now, because I wanted a 4.5-inch wide triangle, it worked out perfectly because the points finished at my corners almost exactly. and it ended like here. So there was this little piece on the top. This piece turned into leaders and enders. Here, I'll show you. Like this, which I then pinned together, and I'll be using these as leaders and enders, and I'll have 4 patches. By sewing the bottom as well, I'd already joined the 2 triangles together, so I didn't have to match them up and put them through again. They were already there, which meant that the corner didn't get eaten by the machine. So I also wound up with 2 of these that were let me get one that's not white. 2 of these that were mirror images of each other. Now these couldn't be used in the charm quilt because each fabric would be represented twice. You know, one with the brown on the right and one with the brown on the left. So what I did from there is I said, okay, let's put them on the back of the quilt. And I did cut them smaller. So the main triangles here are cut at 4.5, and these little guys are cut at 3.5. And you can see how I'm starting to put them together over there. I'm going to give you a little bit more close-up as they get built up so you can see. And my plan is to border them and float them on the back of this quilt. I think I'm actually liking what's going to be the back better than I like the front, but the front was the challenge. So there you go. But the charm quilt is moving along quite nicely. Oh, and the fish. So because I've been doing the mystery quilt and the charm quilt and a couple of other things that I've had to do, I haven't had as much time to do my handwork, but from here down is all completely done. Every single row has been sewn and attached. So I just finished this row recently. Let me see if I can get this out of the way. Here we go. And I have not had time to attach it to the rest yet. So that's why there's this break here. And I do have some blocks up above that are 4x6s that I've sewn when I've been out of the house, but I don't have a full row yet, which is why it's not up on the top. But I think this is coming along very nicely. It's not yet half done. But it's more than a third. So as soon as I sew that on, we're going to be a lot closer to half. But I do like how it's coming out. Then after that, the question is, what kind of embellishments is it going to get? Am I going to be doing embroidery on any of it? Am I going to be doing, button eyeballs? What am I going to do? I don't know yet. I was thinking, I have some glass buttons, and I was thinking about putting them like they were bubbles coming out of the fish. But here's the thing. Fish don't emit bubbles unless they're sick. If a fish is happy, even though it's doing this little mouth thing, it's not going to be sending up a lot of bubbles. So knowing that, I'm having a hard time putting buttons on my quilt. So I got to think about that. But obviously, they all need eyeballs. So do I do that with beads? Do I do that with an applique? Do I do that with buttons? Haven't decided yet. But I think it's coming along well. So I'm pretty pleased with it. I know for the next month or so, I have enough other projects that I have to work on that this is not going to be getting the same amount of time it was getting for a while. I got a lot done over the holiday season just because I was with family and friends in the house, and so I could just be working on it while we were doing other things. So it did make some good progress. I was pretty happy with it. But that progress is slowing down, and it's going to be slowed for a little bit. But that's okay, because that's how life works. Okay, let me get my notes back out here. So I get some of the strangest questions from you guys by email. By the way, the email's right here, mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com. And I was asked after the last episode, what do I have on my sewing table? And I got to thinking, well, that's kind of an interesting question. And so I eliminated things like fabric pieces. Obviously, they're going to be on my sewing table. And they're going to change. They're not going to be static. I do have some weird stuff, though. I have more pin catchers on my table than makes any sense whatsoever. So the thing is that when I go and pin, I pin a lot at one time. So for example, I've had this double pinwheel quilt right here. It says right there, double pinwheel, in my UFO drawers for years and years and years. I don't even know when they went in there. And it said on my tracker I was 25% done. I was obviously in a very charitable to myself mood that day. Because when I pulled it out, I was about 10% done with the blocks. So I made up a whole bunch of pinwheels, and then I cut them up, and now I'm turning them into double pinwheels. And what I did was I did about 50 at once. And so each one has to have a minimum number of pins. So in this case, these aren't even pinned together properly. These are just the pieces in order so that when I'm ready to sew, I put them together properly. I don't have to match any seams at this point, so I didn't worry about pinning them properly, you know, on the sewing line. This is just to keep them together. And do I have one on there? No. But even so, that's 2 each, and you can see that I have quite a few in my drawer. Now the centers here got split because they're extra thick, but this is one stack right here. Okay, so you can tell there's quite a few in there. It is not uncommon for me to pin, use up several hundred pins at a time. Okay, so when I'm pulling the pins, I need lots of places to put them. Okay, and so I have 3 pin keepers on my sewing table right now. So let me switch here. I'll show them to you. Okay, so this is one that I just emptied. Okay, this has a bathroom tile and padding and some walnut shells in it, and then it has this little bag that hangs off the side that you can use for trash. I have what's called a sip and snip on the other side of my board where I keep my cup, so I don't use that bag very often. But if I'm going on a retreat, I'll take this with me. So next month when we have quilt camp, I'm going to be taking this pin cushion, and then I'll put a baggie in here so that it'll catch all my threads, and I'm not pulling the threads out of the seams all the time because that gets annoying. And so I'll just have a little, like a grocery bag or something in there that I can just yank and dump and then put back. So this is pin cushion number 1. Number 2 is this guy. I love wooden boxes. It's just always been a favorite thing of mine, and I have probably 20 of them. And as a professional organizer, I will tell you it's okay as long as you have a use and a space to store them. But I just thought this was beautiful. And so I will use this to catch pins right next to my machine. I put it in my throat of the machine, and then I just pull the pins and drop them in. I like this one in particular for the smaller ones. Some of my bigger headed glass or plastic headed beads have made it in there. But this is usually like silk pins or dressmaker pins, the real short ones that are all metal. Those work really well on there. And then my third one is a flower pot. Okay, now I made this pin cushion. This is just a bag of sand. I like using sand because it'll sharpen my pins as I use them. I kind of like having it in the flower pot because it kind of looks like flowers sticking out of the top. And this is when I'm emptying a bunch of stuff at a time and I'm just jabbing them in. I have been known when I when I travel, and especially like if I'm doing a class, I'll usually put them in little rosettes so it looks more like a flower. And I push them all the way in for travel. So some of you who have seen me speak might have seen that. This is a working one, so these just get jammed in there, however. I have been asked in the past what this one is. Now I use a long pin for this, but people will ask me what this is. Let me switch cameras again and move over here. This little bird is a needle threader. So The beak goes up and the needle threader's here. It's a bar with a little notch right here. So instead of having those loops that when you pull them through sometimes just separate, this is all one solid piece. You loop your thread, you put your needle on, you loop your thread in the notch, and then you pull the needle over. This will take a lot of abuse, this little container. And there's this little hole right here that I put the real big fat pin through, and then I stick it in my pin cushion. So, lots of pin cushions. This one does not fit in the throat of my machine, so I don't just automatically put pins there. I'll pull several pins, grab them all by the heads, and then stuff them in, kind of, to use the Mary Poppins correct term, higgledy-piggledy. Alright, what else is on my table here? I have a mannequin. That's what this little guy is. Here, let's put it, there you go, up against my shirt so you can see him better. These are made for artists to practice people in various different poses. Now, I will say, when we went to Disney and Universal a couple of years ago, we brought back one of these that was shaped like a stormtrooper for our office assistant. And the people there had them in some of the funniest poses I've ever seen. Some were a little risque, but they were hysterical. You know, you'd have a whole bunch of stormtroopers looking like they were Irish dancing, or that would have their hands on their hips, all seductive, you know. So that was a lot of fun. But this is one I've had for, any number of years. And he gets reposed fairly often when I'm just thinking and I want to still manipulate with my hands but not touch my sewing machine, because that could be bad. I play with him. So my mannequin is on my table. And then Scott's been doing this for me recently. I have this snowman jar. It's hard to see the face, but here we go. He's a snowman, and Scott will fill him full of M&Ms every once in a while. I don't eat that much of the M&Ms, but if I am on like a conference call or something and I'm really starting to lose it, having a little bit of a sugar pickup is handy. And so he's there. He also makes me smile, which is the whole point. But sometimes I'll come in here at like 3 o'clock in the morning and I'll want a little something to either moisten my mouth, or I'm a little bit hungry or something, and then that's when I eat the M&Ms. But that's just one of those weird kind of things. Yeah. I think that's pretty much it. I have like my Stream Deck to manage my cameras and that kind of thing. And then of course the fabric and those types of things. I normally have side tables around me in that prime space area I was telling you about. The first one being right here, that has my spare bobbins and those kinds of things on it, my tissues. And then on this side I have one that has my bobbin winder, my notebooks, things that I'm more actively doing. Because I'm doing this, but I also, from this space, do a bunch of other meetings. So for example, tomorrow the Fairfax County Hoarding Task Force has a meeting, and I'll be doing that in this space because it's got the cameras and everything. I'll take down this quilt, and I'll take down the email. And I'll plop up another quilt behind me. But I have all my notebooks that I need for that here. I have my design book, that kind of stuff, right where it's handy. Also things like my troubleshooting guide for you can't get onto YouTube, or I forgot how to upload, or I forgot how to edit, or there's some other thing that I want to do that I don't remember. All of that stuff is right here underneath the sewing table. Now, unfortunately, I'm also inhibited by things like by the light stands and that kind of stuff, which takes up some of my prime real estate. I do have 2 camera mounts. I have the one in front of me, which is my main camera, and then I have one that's on a swing arm next to me, which is the down-facing one. And I have a mount for my monitor. And that's because I'm sitting right in front of my needle right now. Actually, let me scoot another inch. Okay. So I'm right in front of my needle right now. And I want to be able to see what's going on, either because I'm watching a YouTube or a movie or something like that. I'm typing, so I want to be able to see. Or I'm sewing and I want my pieces to go directly across and into the box. So if I had my monitor sitting on my tabletop, my pieces would be skewed to the side as they went around the base of the computer monitor. And that's going to pull my pieces that I'm trying to put through the machine off, because that thread, when I'm chain piecing, would be pulling it off to the side. So by having them go straight, I don't have that problem. But that means my monitor can't be directly in front of me. And it's bad enough for my back and neck to be facing down so much. But if I'm also turned to the side, you'll lengthen these muscles and shorten these, which then when you have to turn to the other side hurts a lot. You don't even have to ask me how I know this. I'm sure you can imagine. So by putting it directly in front of me, it's more ergonomically correct, and it's better for my neck. It's also up off the table high enough that I can, when I'm writing or I'm doing something else, I'm looking not at the halfway height. I'm looking a little bit further up the TV than that, the monitor than that, but not by much. So it's a very good position for my neck and head to be at, to keep me from being so hunched over. It does help that I touch type. My grandmother taught me how. She used to teach business in Queens, New York, when she was a young woman. And so since I can touch type, I don't have to be looking down at my hands while I type as much, which is handy. Except for numbers, I never did get the stretching the fingers all the way up to the top of the keyboard for the numbers thing very well. I love having a number pad on the side. So I'm not perfect at it, but I do enough typing that way, and then I can go back through and edit, that it works out really well. So I do try to make sure that I'm ergonomically solid while I'm sewing. Partially because I don't have that much time to sew. I don't want it to be painful. And partially because as I'm getting older, I want to prevent problems rather than fight them. I already go to the chiropractor once a week anyway. I don't want to give him extra work to do, because every time I leave there, I feel worse than when I walked in for at least the first few hours, because everything got manipulated. The first time I went to a chiropractor and I left, I felt like I was made out of ball bearings. I was just like, oh, everything is so great. It's never been that way since. I don't know what happened. I wish I could get that feeling back. But I do know that over time, it has made a huge difference to me. So I go. And so every week I go. I did go several months without, but then I wound up hunched over so much because I had so many deadline projects that I had to get out, that it really started to hurt, and it's taking me a while to get back to where the adjustments aren't big adjustments. And when I get back to the point where it's just like a little bit here and a little bit there, then I know that I can stretch them apart and do my appointments further apart. My chiropractor is not trying to keep me there every week, which was one of the things that I really like about them. Okay, so I think that we're pretty much updated on all of the quilts that I can show you. I never do show the commissioned quilts here, because either somebody might not want anyone else to ever know that it wasn't done by them. That did happen once. I back way back, I did the quilt for this woman, and then I took a picture of it and was advertising a class, and the girl who had gotten the quilt loved it and wanted to learn how to do it. And then she saw her quilt on the flyer, and she thought her mother had sewn it. But it was for the first time kind of a thing. It was a horrible thing at the time. And so I don't show commission quilts unless the client says that yes, I can sell the pattern for it or teach the class on it. So just so that you know, that's why I don't show you. So there's a lot going on that you don't see, in addition to the full-time organizing stuff. So it's kind of crazy, but that's the way my life tends to run. So at this point, I'd like to do some sewing. And I was going to work on those pieces for the back of the charm quilt. And there's a couple of tips here that we can do. If, by the way, especially if you don't want to stick around for the sewing part, that's perfectly fine. If you've enjoyed what I've done here, please like, subscribe. If you want to know when I'm about to be on, hit the bell. I try to start the live stream about 15 minutes early. So if you are doing something, you'll get the alert that I'm on. You know I start at 7, the first and third Wednesdays of the month. So you can go ahead, finish up what you're doing, you know, wash those last couple of dishes, grab yourself a drink, get a snack, whatever, and then come and sit here if you want to watch it live. So that's why I do that 15 minutes in advance. I've had some people who have said that that's too much time. I should start like 30 seconds, or I should not even have an intro time and just start on time. And then I've had some people say that no, a lot of the people they watch do a half an hour. I think a half an hour is a little much, so I'm aiming around the 15-minute mark. I just don't want to have somebody think that everything I do is going to be an hour and a half long. And that 15 minutes shows up as part of that stream, so it looks like there's it'll take a lot longer than it really will if you fast forward past the intro. Okay. So let's go ahead and start here. I'm going to switch cameras again. Okay. Let me get this down here. Dun, dun, dun. So this is one of those things that I was doing before. I'm sorry if I'm making you seasick. I just can't see where to place this. I've got my extra tea here. Oh, the tea. So I've been doing this 30-day challenge. Here we go. Is that lined up right? That looks a little upside down. Well, that's not right. Let's try it like this. Maybe this will help. There we go. Now we're cooking with gas. All right. I'm going to attempt, rather than doing a New Year's resolution kind of a thing, if this is your first time, I'm doing several 30-day challenges. And let me switch back. And so the first one I'm doing is I'm eliminating all carbonated drinks from my diet. Now, I have gone without Diet Coke before, but then I would go for like strawberry fizzy water, so I wouldn't be having the caffeine, and I wouldn't be having all the same chemicals. I just had different chemicals that I was drinking. So I am attempting to have no carbonation. And I'm more than halfway through the month, thank God. I'm 2/3. So I have tea here. Now, let me grab a sip. I like tea, don't get me wrong. But I will tell you, food tastes different when you drink tea with it than when you drink Diet Coke. Especially when you've been drinking Diet Coke since you were a teenager. So I'm looking forward to this being over. What I think I'm going to do is, because I like saving money, which is a nice thing, because tea costs a whole lot less than soda does. So I like saving some money, and I think that having the fewer chemicals will be good for me. But food just doesn't taste as good. So what I think I'm going to do is I'll still have my Diet Coke at meal times. You know, so if I'm out and around and I stop at McDonald's or someplace for lunch, I'll still grab a soda there. But when I'm here at home and it's not a meal, I think I'm going to stick with the tea. So I think, now I still have 10 more days to go. I may change my mind. But as of this point, I am seeing some benefits to not drinking as much soda. But I do desperately miss it. So I see no reason to torture myself overly much if I don't have to. So at least for meal times, I think it's going to be coming back into the repertoire. I do have a couple of other challenges that I'm thinking of. I don't want to do a ton of them. I only want to do between 3 and 6 this year. If you have a challenge, either a sewing related one or a not sewing related one that you think that I should try, Feel free to email me, mail at StashBlasterQuilts.com. Drop a comment here, or if you know me, just tell me when you see me. Several of you actually belong to the quilt guilds chapters that I belong to. At least a few of you do. So anytime, drop me a note, let me know what you think, and I will take them all under consideration. Okay? Okay, time to sew. So what I did was I took all of these pieces, oops, okay, these, and I laid them out on the wall, and then I pinned the side I need to sew on. So here I'm putting two sides together, same thing here, but I just did a couple where I would, like this one, where I sewed the ends here. I know it's hard to tell. Where I was sewing the seam edge together, where these seams go. So when I took them off the wall, I took them off in the pairs and I put them here. Okay, actually that's a little close, I think. Can I pull it back a little and still let you see? I think that might be better. There we go. So in this case, one thing that I found with piecing these, I watched years ago, I watched somebody who was sewing these, and they always started at the point. But I have found that if I work my way towards the point, I actually got better seams. So it's up to you. On the charm quilt behind me, I actually marked all of my corner points. If you look here, you'll see there's no markings. I'm assembling this back without them. Now, does that mean that my center here is absolutely perfect? No, but you know what? It's close. It's close enough that unless somebody's going to touch their nose to my quilt, they're not going to know. And let me see if I can get it focused better. For some reason, this is not focusing particularly well. I don't know, but you can see the points are pretty good. And I'm not going to stress over it. This is a backing. In fact, this will probably wind up being the front, but technically it's the back. So on my sewing machine, halfway through this foot is my 1/4 inch. So I do often put up a ledge, like Karen Brown talks about, of painter's tape, but a lot of what I'm sewing in amongst all the various projects, that ledge isn't going to help me because I'm doing like half square triangles. So I'm following a line rather than the edge of the fabric. So that wasn't really helpful. So I don't have one right now. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and remove the pin. The pin was there just to keep the pair together. I'm going to press down on the point to keep it from shifting. I'm going to slowly start and then pick up speed. Now here there's a couple things you can do. I do have a pair of tweezers. I love these long handled tweezers for getting my bobbin thread out when it's been cut. I can get down into my machine if something gets loose or dropped in there, or for lint. I also have, these are actually from a cocktail food tray things. These are just wooden forks. These work beautifully for guiding pieces through underneath your foot. In this case, these exactly fit in the gap that I have here. There's lots of ways to do it. And if you are doing precision piecing, yes, you would want to take your tweezers here, continue to press down on this point, and run it through your machine. But, honestly, it's a back. I'm not worrying about it being 100% precise. I'm going for an overall aesthetic. So, if it's slightly off, and those points aren't 100% on the dot, I don't care. This is not a quilt that's going to be judged or given as a gift. Okay? This is going to be a gaming table topper. So when we're playing dice games or whatever, this is what's going to be on the table to keep dice from rattling all over the place, because I hate that sound after a while. This is not something that's going to be, hung at the Louvre. It's not something that's going to be traveling the country. This is a knock-around piece. I'm having fun just doing something weird with the back. It doesn't matter if it's 100% perfect. So if it's slightly off, I'm not going to have a problem. But as I showed you they tend to be pretty good. So I showed you this one. Those points are pretty darn good. Here's another one. These points are pretty... Oops. Did it just shift on me? I think it did. See this one? The points are pretty good. So, yeah, it goes in and out of focus. I don't know why. Well, because it's a webcam, not a real camera. But I think you can see that they're fairly close. They're not 100% perfect, but they're pretty close. Okay. So here's another one. I'm going to pull this pin. Every time I say pull the pin on camera, I feel like I'm talking about dynamite. Okay, I'm also going to take my pin box here I showed you. If I didn't have this here, I'd just leave these on the deck and put them here by the throat and then pick up a bunch of them and stuff them in my pin cushion. But since I have this here, of course all my pin cushions travel up and downstairs because you can't pin downstairs if you don't have pins. So they kind of alternate. I'll use them downstairs and then bring them up when they're empty and then fill them, and then in the meantime I've taken another one downstairs because it's full. Okay. Now, I usually use my box of leaders and enders, but right now I'm working on 4 different quilts. So I'm using each quilt as a leader and ender for another quilt that I'm doing. So while I'm focusing on this one right now, the reason that I have pinned together all the parts for those double pinwheel blocks is because those are going to be my leaders and enders for this. And then when this project is done, the pinwheels will become my main project, and a different project will become the leader and ender for that. Having said that, I do have this whole box here of leaders and enders that are already pinned together. So if I ever need one, I have one without having to worry about which project or whatever. So when you're watching this, you're going to see me when I run out of the stuff that I've pre-figured out, because this has been more complicated than I thought with these blocks, because I didn't take the easy way out. I had originally, actually here, I think I have my sketch here, hold on. I do. Okay. So I had a couple ideas here. Oh, you can't quite see. Alright, let's turn this. There we go. So this was the original thought. So these are split in half, and I was just going to have them oriented vertically. Okay, so then we'd have this diamond shape here, and then another diamond here. I know it's a little bit harder to see, but I hope you can get it. And this made for a very regular... Oh, here. If I turn it like this, that's better. It's sideways to me, but that's okay. So there was this very elongated, all straight lines look. And then I said, well, what if I put them together like this? And I really liked the way this one looks. But that means that I have seams going in all the different directions. And then if you look at this hexagon in the middle, there's another hexagon right below it. Now this isn't how I laid it out ultimately, but I would want the lights and darks to alternate there as well, and then all these side pieces to alternate in. So it took quite a bit of thinking to figure out how to make this work. And since half my blocks are oriented one way and half are oriented the other, that makes it an even bigger challenge. Okay. So I really only have a fairly small number of them that I've gotten all figured out, because I did that yesterday. So I have a whole lot more to do. The ones on the wall are the center diamonds that I had done, but I hadn't figured out all the side piecings. So when I'm done with this, I'm going to switch right over and then start piecing the double pinwheel. Alright, I'm going to use this one on this one so you can see it better. There you go. Pops right through. Now if you like to pin, there's no reason why you, if this was you couldn't have popped pins in, you know, one at the beginning and then one back here at the point. Or again, if you're going for precision piecing, that's the kind of thing you need to do if you want to make sure that it's absolutely perfect. But this is pretty close. Now you'll also notice that I did press the seams open on these. I did the same on the charm quilt to make sure that things laid as flat as possible. And in this particular case, because of how heavy this center gets to be, you really need to do that. So here's the middle part here. All of these seams are radiating in together, and trying to nest that, trying to spin that many seams, this gets really tough, because then you're also loosening up all those last couple stitches in order to be able to spin it. And so I made the decision, excuse me, to go ahead and press it with the seams open. That does mean that those leaders and enders I showed you, like this one, okay, these are also pressed open, okay? And so I'm going to make sure that all of these are going to go in one quilt together. Now, what that quilt's going to be, I don't know yet. Okay, but I'm going to label them as that they were pressed open, as in my 4-patch drawer. There have been other times I've done that, so I have some other ones that are pressed open, but I don't want to be combining the open ones with the ones that are spun, because then my quilt top will be uneven. But let's say, well, at Quilt Camp, one of the classes that's being taught is about combining orphan blocks to make a quilt. And so this is the kind of thing where I might take 4 patches like this and put them together. Now there's a lot of them, but maybe that'll be like a center block where those all go together in a triple Irish chain or something, and then put other things around it rather than doing an entire quilt of them. So that's why I want to keep them segregated, so that I don't mix them in with the regular. Because if you look here, these are my drawers of my my basic blocks is what I call them. So it's a square and a square, 9-patch, flying geese, 2 half square triangles, a 4-patch, and a pairs. I've got a lot of pairs from when I've done projects where I've done strip sets, and so at the end I have various lengths of strip set left, and those go in there, because then I can either cut them and make them matching 4 patches, or I can do other things with them. But there's already one seam sewn, so it goes in my 2s drawer, because I've done part of the work already. The goal is to get all the work done, but we do it in little tiny chunks so that it's not painful. Okay, so this has been a very back and forth on the cameras episode here, so I apologize if that's been a problem. Okay, so here's one where we're going to be sewing the 2 across the seam where the 2 ends are. I am going to keep this pinned, but all I'm going to do is match up my center. Okay, like this. I don't know if you can see that well at all. So my loops here are all lined up. I'm going to stick my pin in. I'm going to double check on this side that these 2 seams continue to line up, because it's not going to line up at the point, right? Because these have been sewn and this one hasn't. So I'm going to check the middle. Does that line up? Yes. I tuck the pin in the rest of the way. And now I'm going to go ahead, make sure my point lines up, and I will sew it. Now my mom used to sew over her pins, and I know that horrifies people. I don't, but I will wait until my needle has caught that first flap, just so that I'm sure that I'm not going to have it roll back underneath. And then I'm just going to go ahead and finish the seam. Okay. So that's all there is to this. It's not That's odd. I don't know what I was thinking there. Oh, okay, so my picture froze. Huh. That's not good. Alright. I'm gonna have to go back to camera 1. And I'll have to remember to tell my son that we're having trouble with this camera again. So, before I forget, I'm going to ask you to indulge me for just... No, I won't. I'll do it after I'll remember. So, what is this weird conglomeration? Well, when I was pulling it off the wall, I had several larger pieces that were ready to go. And this is ultimately actually going to be a triangle. It's going to be where I need to put in a Y seam here. Because when I first started putting these together, I wasn't really paying attention to how it was going to lay out on the wall. Because I knew if I was doing hexes, then I would want it to go light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, all the way around. And so I just started sewing pairs together or triples together. And then I realized that because some of them would be going light, dark, and some would be going dark, light, I actually have to lay it out and get it figured out. And I hadn't done that yet. And so some of these, since they'd already been put together into bigger sets, I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just use them. But that does mean that sometimes weird things have to happen. So that's what's going to happen here, is I'm going to have to do 3 seams to put these 3 pieces together, but not in the way I normally would. If this is your first time here, or your first time watching this, I do a lot of problem solving while I sew, just so that you know that. This is not an uncommon thing for me to jump in and then realize, no, I need to do something else to actually finish it. So in this case, since these 2 pieces are hexagons, I'm going to have 2 parts where I need to match seams. So this center seam on these 2 triangles, but then I also need to match the corner up nicely. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Now, because my needle is coming across here, I'm going to put my pin here so that I can start that corner with the pin in place, and then I'll move it out of the way as I'm getting to the pin. So let me grab one here. And I do want the pin in because trying to manipulate it up to the needle, it's easy for that to shift, and then you're not going to be close on your point. Okay, so now it looks like that. Okay, I'm sorry that camera froze up. If this is also if this is your first time here, I do have a hate-hate relationship with technology. So it's really not all that uncommon for, well, it's been uncommon lately, but when I started, we had so much trouble with cameras. And for some reason, this camera 1 has been with me the whole time, but I've killed I don't know how many other cameras, the webcams that I've had set up. It doesn't make any sense. We bought all the cameras at the same time from the same place, and one is a rock star and the rest were the druggy groupies, they just flaked right out. Okay, now I do have that other seam to do, but I have a dilemma in that now I've run out of my stuff to sew that I had pre-pinned. So I'm going to go ahead and pull one of these that I showed you before of the double pinwheel. I've already sewn this one. This pin is just telling me that this seam needs to be sewn. So I'm going to yank that pin out. It's harder to do this upright compared to if I'd been on camera 3. And then I'm going to just match these up. Like so. Now this side is part of the half square triangle. This side is just part of the 2 patch, two large rectangles. So because I like to have as little going on the bottom as possible, because that's what can get caught in your feed dogs, or you could have nests that you don't see. I'm actually going to put this through with this plain piece on the bottom. I have had people tell me that no, you should always put the other one on the bottom so that the seam is facing up, etc. I get it. I don't think that it's as dire as some people feel. But then again, a lot of people learned that there was only the one way, or the quilt police were going to come and get you. I learned from books, taught myself, lots of trial and error, and I know it works for me, and that's what counts. It is 8 o'clock. I want to respect your time, so although I'm going to keep going, please feel free to join me again the first and third Wednesday of every month. Again, you can email me at mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com. You can leave comments in the comment section here. I do respond to everything that I get. I do read everything that I get, because I'm not that popular yet. Hopefully someday there won't be time in the day. But that's not the case now. So please reach out to me. And again, on the chat, if you want to bring up any questions. The general rule of thumb is, if it won't make my husband blush, or it's not too personal in terms of like finances or things like that, I'm happy to answer questions on practically anything. So please feel free. And I really hope you had a good time and that you'll join me again. Have a great time. Bye-bye. Oh, I moved my phone over here. I can't get to my mouse. That'll be an outtake, right? Sometime in the future. Take care. Bye-bye.